So now we are going to start with the scaling techniques, or simply if you did not understand scaling, I would say two types of, there is further classification of scales, another classification of scales, one is comparative, other one is non-comparative. Scaling, as I said, it is a process by which we arrive at locating the objects on the continuum. This process can be by comparing two people, you say one is more, or by individually rating one. So these become two different processes of scaling, two different processes of locating the measured objects on a scale. That is why there are two types of scaling techniques corresponding. There are two type of scales. This is a different classification. Earlier the nominal, ordinal, this one is based upon the way they are arrived at, comparative and non-comparative scales, or comparative or non-comparative scaling. Comparative scaling, as the name indicates, we compare the object on certain characteristic and then locate them on the continuum. In non-comparative, we do not compare the objects on a characteristic, but individually rate, like just like I asked, I like Pepsi. I am not saying how much you like Pepsi more than Coca-Cola, or compare Pepsi and Coca-Cola. That will become comparative scaling. So we will look at both as we move forward. So comparative scales involve the direct comparison of stimulus objects. Comparative scale data must be interpreted in relative terms. So comparative scales are ordinal scales. Now what are the various techniques? The first comparative scaling is called paired comparison scaling. So what is happening? We will be arriving at the scale that is ordinal through comparative scaling. One of the procedure of comparative scaling is paired comparison scaling. Let's say we want to compare the market's preference of 5 different shampoo brands for men. Now tell me 5 different shampoo brands. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, fifth one, last one. Yeah, tell me one brand. The one you use. Okay, sorry. So one is, let's say, Dove. Shampoo brand. Clinic Plus. Give me one more. L'Oreal. So diagonal we don't count. So what we do in this, a brand manager of a particular brand in a shampoo product category, let's say of any of these particular brand, or somebody who is going to launch a new brand would want to know what is the target market preference when it comes to these 5 brands. What is the order? One way is paired comparison scaling. What you do is, to the respondents you ask in pairs. So who will be my respondent? If given a choice between Dove and Clinic Plus, what would you prefer? Clinic Plus. So we give a score of 1 if the column 1 is preferred over the row 1. Between Sunsilk and Dove? Dove. Okay. Between Head and Shoulder and Dove? Head and Shoulder. Between L'Oreal and Dove? L'Oreal. Okay. Now in the next row, so Dove and Clinic Plus we have already evaluated. Clinic Plus is more, so we will put it 0. Now Sunsilk and Clinic Plus. Sunsilk. Head and Shoulder and Clinic Plus. L'Oreal and Clinic Plus. L'Oreal. So between Sunsilk and Dove it is done. It is 0. Dove was preferred. 1. Here Sunsilk was there, so 0. Right? Sunsilk and Clinic Plus, Sunsilk was there, so 0, right? Clinic Plus. The next one, between Head and Shoulder and Sunsilk. Do you use Head and Shoulder? Between L'Oreal and Sunsilk. L'Oreal. So between Head and Shoulder and Dove we have done already Head and Shoulder. Between Head and Shoulder and Clinic Plus, Head and Shoulder again. Between Sunsilk and this row is Head and Shoulder and Sunsilk. Where it is, okay, Head and Shoulder and Sunsilk, Head and Shoulder 1, 0. So the last one is L'Oreal and Head and Shoulder. Between L'Oreal and Head and Shoulder. L'Oreal, okay. So the last row we have already got answer to everything. Between L'Oreal and Dove it was L'Oreal, so 0. Clinic Plus and L'Oreal we had 0. Sunsilk 0, 0, right? So we got one of the respondents' answers here. Now if you add the scores column wise, this is 1, this is 1, this is 1, this is 3 and this is 4. So which means the rank 1 is the one with the greatest score. So for L'Oreal is most preferred, second is Head and Shoulder, and Sunsilk, Clinic Plus and Dove, they are low preference and equal. So likewise you have to collect data from 1000 people. Depending upon your market size, you have to take a representative sample and do this matrix. Do it for a particular target segment, not for the entire market with everybody else, because then you will get every different kind of responses. So this is how, by comparing two brands, so total 5 brands you wanted to compare, you wanted to know their order of preference, you compared in pairs and got this rank for this person.
So can we say Harsha is indifferent between Dove, Clinic Plus and Sunsilk?
No, he has low preference for all these 3. Yes, he is indifferent. He has low preference. He would not use any of them. But one of the limitations of this is, I asked him, do you use Head and Shoulder? He has, second good preference, most preference about it. But he said he doesn't use it. So which means you can ask to the target market, but it doesn't mean that the number 1 would be the one he would be using. It is possible that that brand would not come in your comparison list. So that is one of the limitations. You are not asking which one you prefer, you prefer and use most, or which one you prefer most among all the existing brands. You are comparing from among your list.
But this won't show how much one prefers over another brand.
This is, as I said, comparative scaling. You can also get that. Let's say for 1000 people, you got this matrix, and then you want to compare between Dove and Clinic Plus. Dove and Clinic Plus for 1000 people. And let's say one score was there among, when you add the scores across 1000 matrices, you get the score, let's say 2-1, 2-1, let's say 213 out of 1000. So what did you get? Here you will get how much one is, some indication, some percentage you are getting. How many like this more than that? But the idea is to get the rank order in such a way. You did not ask me why we did not choose the other method of directly saying these are the 5 brands, rank from 1 to 5. Paired comparison, yes, when you compare in pairs, the comparison will be more precise. And the limitation of this method is that you can do it with the less number of brands. If 5 are there, if 6 are there, then the number of comparisons will increase. And like Harsha was towards the end, he was saying, why did you pick me up? He was saying, if it would have been 2-3 questions, it is okay, you are going on 10 questions. That becomes a problem. The more the number of brands, the more you cannot use this method. Then you have to use some other method. Then there is direct method of this rank order scaling. You directly, given the number of brands, these brands, you rank which one you prefer most, give it rank 1 and then give in that order, and the rank 10 should go to the last brand. That is the rank order scaling. When you have more than 5 brands, you can use this. Now the third method in the comparative scaling is called constant sum scaling.
Yes, please.
So the ranking that you did for Harsha, that was paired comparison.
Paired comparison. This is the next one is rank order. We are directly asking for the rankings in terms of the preference for a particular respondent. And 1 to 10, one could directly give, and likewise you have to do for 1000 customers, assuming that 1000 is a representative sample for your population, and then carry out your analysis. Next method is constant sum scaling. In this method, what you say is, let's hear it with the help of an example. These are the attributes of a bathing soap. Now, you ask the respondent that out of these attributes, suppose you have to allocate 100 points in such a way that you allocate more points to the attribute that you want most and least number of points to the attribute you want least, and in such a way that it all adds up to 100. This is constant sum scaling. Like in this particular method, constant sum scaling, you see there are 3 segments appearing, because these 3 segments, they give different points to the different characteristic. The segment number 1, price matters most to them, to the second segment, cleaning power, and to the third segment, moisturizing. So let's say you want to, let's say a company wants to make the face cream or skin cream for adult women 18 plus. And what they did was, they first did the interviews with some of them to identify what do they look for in a skin cream. There are 8 benefits. Then they chose a sample of 5000 women, and to each one of them they asked to allocate the points to these benefits in such a way that they give most number of points to the one the benefit matters most to them, the least to the one that matters least to them. Once you have data, one could run analysis. For segmentation, cluster analysis you do, and you can separate the different segments. So the benefits could be confidence, beauty, moisturizing, sexual allure, young, youthful. So there could be many benefits, and when you do that, you might get, this company might get different segments, that there are, let's say, 5 segments where women are wanting different benefit from a skincare cream. So which means you have 5 segments. Now you have to decide, first of all, identify what is the descriptive character, what is the characteristic of that particular segment. Which means if you get 5 different segments, let's say through this method, after that what you will do? If you get 3 different segments like here, or you get 5 different segments. What is your name? What is your name? Ritika. I do not know Ritika belongs to which segment out of these 5 segments. So I have to identify that particular characteristics with the help of which I could identify who are the ladies who would belong to segment 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Anyways, that is out of the scope. What I am going to say, what I am saying is, using this is a good method for doing segmentation. It might look very simple, but it is a good method for doing segmentation. On the allocation of points, somebody who is wanting a particular, let's say when you go to buy a mobile phone, smartphone, you might want a better camera, I might want a better storage. So your preference is different. So let's say we find a cluster of people who have similar preferences like you. So that becomes one segment. I might make phone for this segment or the segment in which I fall into. So you cannot make everything for every segment. You can make, big companies can make it, but you have to choose among. That's what we do, segmentation, targeting, positioning. That is why we do, because there are different segments whose desires are, whose wants are, whose needs are different. So you would make product for one of these segments or two of these segments. You cannot make a single product which appeals to everybody. Any questions here? So you will get a rank order based upon the more number of points allocated. But you could also ask me, this is out of 100 for each segment. Let's say when you are asking to allocate 100 points, somebody could allocate 0 points also. So why not it is ratio? Why it is comparative scaling? Why we are getting the ordinal sort of order? I have said 0 to 100 you can allocate points across these attributes. True zero. Then why not it is a ratio? Why not? Why I am saying it is a comparative scaling? Why not? Why it is non-comparative? Where I said comparative scaling, you will get the scale which is ordinal in nature. But what you are getting here is similar to ratio.
Because there is no objective way to measure the difference. Like when I give the marks, I actually do it subjective only.
That is fine. In marketing, many things you will take the answers on the subjective concepts. How much satisfied with you are with a particular service. You will give your subjective. If you are happy, you will try to quantify it, but the concept is still subjective in nature. In marketing, we are trying to look at things that are there in the minds of customers, which are subjective. We are trying to quantify them through scales. That could be comparative, non-comparative. That could be nominal, ordinal, ratio, and so interval. Anyways, think about it. Now let's move to the non-comparative scaling. Q sort, not much. So you can read some of the things on your own. That's why I did not discuss Q sort. Q sort is used when there are large number of objects and they have to be placed into buckets based upon how they vary in terms of a characteristic. Let's say a firm has 100 new product ideas and they want to determine which of these ideas are promising to the potential market, which are not. So they would call, let's say, 100 people and tell them that place these ideas in terms of the one you prefer most, like, neutral, dislike, and prefer least. So they will read each one of these ideas and put in these 5 buckets. So Q sort scaling is mainly used when the number of items to be segregated are large in number, and then they are sorted into groups based upon what they like most and what they like least.
Is this inspired or has anything to do with the quick sort algorithm?
Quick sort algorithm. No, this is Q sort. I am not very sure whether it came from quick sort algorithm. I am not sure, but this is a name which is given to it. In this also you are sorting the objects on that particular characteristics based upon whether you prefer one more than the other. So one would compare the ideas and put in the bucket, let's say prefer most, you have put out of 100, 9 and so on. One would do that. What is the non-comparative scaling? So we have read about the comparative scaling where the scale would be ordinal in nature. The scale would have labels like most preferred, moderately preferred, least preferred. super least preferred. So that is the comparative scale, where the scale points are ordinal. There is an order, nothing more than that. Order and description, nothing more than that. In non-comparative scaling, when we measure the concepts, in comparative, when we are measuring, we are comparing two objects and locating. We are comparing many objects or two objects and locating them. We are measuring characteristic of two objects by way of comparison and locating them on a continuum. And this continuum becomes an ordinal scale. In non-comparative scaling, we do not compare the object on a particular characteristic that has to be measured, but we evaluate the object on a particular characteristic alone, not by comparing with other object. For example, if it is asked how would you rate Sears as a department store, or Big Bazaar is not working, right? Big Bazaar is how would you rate Ambika as a department store, let's say? No, that is your evaluation, right? So I am not saying compare Ambika with any other, with Nilgiris. I am saying how would you rate Ambika as a department store, rate from in a continuum from 1 to 100. Now I am not telling you to compare Ambika with Nilgiris and say which is more, which you like more. What I am saying, one at a time, one object at a time. Rate your preference for buying at Ambika store from 1 to 100. And these are different ways of asking it. One version is where the lowest is probably the worst, probably the best. The other one is you can also put labels like starting from 0 and the best one will be 100. So these are different ways of asking it. This is a non-comparative scale because each object is evaluated independently of other.
Sir, but I mean, when your respondent is responding to this questionnaire, he will have some idea of.
Yeah, he would have some standard in mind or some benchmark based upon his previous experiences, right? So it is explicitly not comparative. But when you are asking, you are not asking the comparison with other brands. You are, in a way, at the back of mind, there would be some benchmark or something based upon which you would mark it. That is okay. But we are not explicitly asking for comparing Ambika with Nilgiris and market. We are just asking how was your experience at Ambika store today? When you go to so many, at your hometowns also, sometimes they have smileys. Which one? 4-star, 5-star. So they are all non-comparative scale.
So Google reviews are also then non-comparative.
Yes.
So let's say you have to compare Coke and Pepsi on which one you prefer more. So through comparative, what you will do, you will say compare Coke with Pepsi on your preference and tell me which is which is more preferred and which one is not so much preferred. If you compare Coke and Pepsi, that will become comparative scale. In non-comparative, what you will say? I prefer Coke from 1 to 5. Strongly agree. I prefer Pepsi 1 to 5. So you will take the reading separately for Coke first and Pepsi first. You would not say compare. When you say compare, then becomes comparative. When you take one at a time, that becomes non-comparative scaling. You can still compare after non-comparative scaling. Let's say I like Pepsi. She says 5. And I ask, rate this statement. I like Coke. She says 3. So we can still compare. We can say although she has given ratings to two different statements separately, but we can still say she prefers Pepsi more than Coke by 2 units. We can also give the number of units by which she prefers it more. So that is called rating or Likert item or question. There is a Likert scale also we will quickly get into. Now the first one was continuous rating scale, where we see there was a continuum between 1 to 100, so you can mark 60.5 also, 39.5 also, 39.2 also, 0.1 also. Continuum 0 to 100. Non-comparative, one object at a time on a continuum, then on a continuum through non-comparative method it becomes a continuous rating scale. There is an itemized rating scale. Here item is the name for question or a statement. Let's say this is one of the statement to measure attitude towards tennis. It is more fun to play a tough competitive tennis match than to play an easy one. Strongly agree. So this represent a Likert item. Item means a question or a statement. Here the concept that is measured is attitude towards tennis. One could measure this particular concept using one item, one statement, one question. Then it will be called single item Likert. Likert format of answering is strongly agree to strongly disagree, 5-point scale, 7-point scale. This is Likert. There was a scientist, social scientist. I forgot his full name. Second name was Likert. Rensis Likert. So he gave that particular format. So when you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 represents strongly agree or highly important, 1 represent strongly disagree, highly unimportant. That is a format called Likert scale format, where there are discrete values. You cannot mark anything between 1 to 2. Either you have to mark 1, 2 or 3, 4, 5. This is not a continuum, discrete scale. That is called Likert scale or Likert answer option. Now let's say I am measuring this attitude towards tennis not with only one of this Likert item, but I add 3, 4 more items. I say one is this item, then another one is the time seems to pass very quickly when I play tennis. I feel engrossed when I play tennis. So what I am doing is I am adding more questions, more statements to this particular concept attitude, and I am measuring using 3 different statements, and the score I will take average of the person's score on these 3 items. 1 to 5, 1 to 5, 1 to 5. Let's say score is 5, 5, 5. The average is 5, which means the score for that person on attitude towards playing tennis becomes 5 out of 5-point scale. So Likert scale can be multi-item, it can be single item. Single item when there is one question, multi-item is when there are many questions used.
Can we combine the rankings of the multi-question?
First of all, what we are measuring through Likert question format is rating. We are not measuring ranking. So we can combine by taking average of the ratings on all these questions, and that average score will become the score of that particular concept. Let's say we want to measure happiness. How happy Saurabh generally is. And I give one statement. That statement says, I am relaxed most of the time. And then I add 3, 4 more statements that I am carefree most of the time. I never take tension. I give tension. So all these questions will become multi-item scale to measure somebody's happiness. Now happiness is a concept which is in the mind, black box. We are trying to measure these concepts which are in the black box of the customer through certain concepts which we are measuring through these statements. So this is the multi-item scale to measure consumer belief about the whether they have positive belief or negative belief about a particular department store. So this is about a store, Kmart, measuring the extent to which the attitude towards the store. The statements are: the store has an inviting atmosphere, the clerks are knowledgeable, the store's checkout lines move slowly. So you are measuring one's attitude towards Kmart store using these multi questions, multi statements.
But sir, does it carry any meaning? If we like for question number one, there will be a response. Question number two, there will be a response. Question number three, add all the responses.
Yeah, you can add and or take the average. Better is to take the average, so you'll get the score on 5 point.
That means we are converting comparative to interval ratio. Sorry.
No, when we are taking the average, it will remain as interval. We are taking the interval scale, the average we are taking, and the one we will get is the. We cannot take average for interval, but generally what is done, again, this is something which is done. The average is taken. Although what should have been better would have been, because this also we are force fitting the interval scale. Now interval scale itself doesn't have a true origin, which means truly we cannot take the average, but we generally take the average and move with it, although it is not correct. So we'll carry on with it in the next class. Thank you, everybody.